basically everything that's on here is really is to help my community when I look at it.
People want to talk to you.
I wonder if there's an eviction.
I don't know.
Could you hold this? Let's film.
How you doing? Okay. How you doing? Paul.
What we are is we are a socialist party. We believe in struggling together for these things. Because no politician would give it to us. We have to fight for it. Just like the Black Panthers did it
Right.
50 years ago.
Right.
But now it's everybody, black, white, Latino, women, men, like you say, LGBTQ. Everybody has to fight together because we all have to have housing, right?
Right.
Cancel the rent. We all need an income.
I was looking at that. You see what it say, bro? It say council rent and mortgage. No evictions or foreclosures.
Yeah, that sounds good.
That sounds good.
That's gonna be hard.
That's gonna be hard. Yeah, that's gonna be hard.
That's the thing. We gotta fight for it.
Yeah, we gotta fight for it.
It's gonna be easy. We gotta bring it to them boys fierce. Like we ain't finna back down from that at all. Period.
Yeah.
So as long as that's why we're trying to get.
I mean, I could fight for something like that because I mean the property rate it wouldn't be so bad with stuff like that.
Right.
If we boost the minimum wage and yeah, everything that you said here is like basically what we fight for and what we talk about, and what we stress about. From the reparations to the equality for everybody, for the LGBTQ community. Yeah, my brother, he's a part of that community.
Some European countries, they've been paying people an income ever since the pandemic started.
Right.
People are getting help, and here was one $1,200 check, and everybody didn't get it.
Everybody did get it. There's still people still waiting on it.
Exactly, but they could put $1 trillion into the stock market just for to let that thing crash again.
Right.
So it's just like they got that money. They got that money to put into the military infrastructure. They just gave the military more money. Exactly. They just put all that more bread into the military, money that could have went to us. There was like they had money set aside for the CARES Act that was supposed to help the community. They took that money out of the CARES Act to go buy more guns and weapons and stuff to go ahead and kill other people in other countries.
Right.
It's like because they'll come to us about us doing crime, us selling drugs, us robbing or whatever. But they go ahead, they sending our people all the way to these other countries, rob them. They going to they going all the way to the Middle East, protecting drug shipments, all that type of thing going on. Gotcha.
Would you like to get emails from us? So
Yeah.
we can keep in touch?
Yeah.
If you could do this, we have your name and your email and your phone number and your zip code. I think would help.
Yeah.
But we'll keep in touch with you because we're going to be doing a community struggle here about people's water being shut off.
Definitely.
Yeah. I just had to pay this is so crazy about my water, right? I just had to pay $2,100. Oh, I had a water bill $2,100.
Are you kidding?
Yeah. Right now I'm fighting it. It's been going on since about a year, and now it's down to like I'm paying like it's like $400.
Oh,
Yeah.
For what? A month?
Yeah. It's like $400. So now they just tell me to give what I can. So I try to give them like $70, $80 a month. When that's too high. That's too much.
Is it like just a flat bill?
It's a flat bill. I just go down and pay it. It's just a flat bill.
It should have, because I know sometimes we get water bills, they got the amount of water you use. Something's off with that if that's that high. And they know it. They ain't letting, they just make it.
Yeah, see, they know it. And that's when they just tell me just to give them what they can because they know there's a problem with it. And they just tell me to give them what I can.
You know, that's their responsibility.
Yeah. And so I'm still paying them like $70, $80 a month to trying to break the $400 down.
Oh yeah, that's as you said, that's
you work every little dollar count, man.
Every little dollar count. You're right about that. Every little dollar count.
All right. That was a clip from one of my guests tonight. She's an activist. She was the Party for Socialism and Liberation's presidential candidate. The woman I voted for president. Gloria La Riva.
Hi. How you doing, Jason?
I'm doing all right. I met this wonderful woman quite a few months ago. She came on the show a while back, and we had a great talk. She introduced me to even more people because that's how she does things. And we have stayed connected through this time. And being the wonderful, kind heart that she is, she checks up on me every so often to make sure that I'm okay. And I just want to say this on there in front of everybody. That means a lot, because not everybody that you talk to that's promoting something bothers to check on you periodically to make sure you're all right. And she, to say motherly is an understatement. She definitely yells at me about, you need to file for the unemployment and get your money. You need to get your money, Jason.
Did you?
I did. I have to wait now. I've been waiting for some time, but your periodic messages mean a lot to me. So thank you very much. That means a lot to me. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I was on the wrong browser.
Okay. And now we're all here. And also we have all the way live from Riverside, California, economist extraordinaire, also recently on the show, Dr. Asatar Bair, Marxist economist, or should I say communist economist or Marxist economist?
You can say either one. I don't like when people say that I'm, have socialist inclinations or something like that. Then I'll just say, nah, man, I'm a communist. But yeah, Marxist. I mean, I'm not going to take offense.
Fair enough, though.
Unless it doesn't go far enough. That's.
I'm really glad to have you guys on here. So the election is over. There's a bunch of shows of people that are so scared about a Trump coup and a GOP party coup. Me personally, I don't see that happening, and I don't know if we're going to get into the coup right now. But my bigger question is, for the left, what is our next step? So many people said, well, if we can't have Trump in office, he's a neo-fascist, he's an authoritarian, we got to have him out of office. You can push Joe Biden to the left, you can fight neoliberalism, but you can't fight fascism. So I will direct this to Gloria, who we just showed organizing in South Carolina. What is the next step for us on the left?
Well, I just want to say also hi to the other guest,
Dr. Bair.
I'm looking forward to hearing you. Well, you raised something in the beginning just now about people characterizing either president or the party. And really, what's taking place right now with Trump, he knows that he totally lost, but he's really a con man, and he's involved in a con game. He has a super PAC that he's collecting a ton of money right now by talking about save the vote or whatever his game is. And he gets $5,000 off the top of every donation that's larger. It's what he's always been about. But what's really unbelievable and disgusting is the head of the Senate Republicans, and then you have Lindsey Graham and all these other Republicans who are refusing to recognize that Biden won. In order to, they're hoping that they will be able to have enough of a fight to win the 2 senatorial runoff seats in Georgia. It's amazing how Georgia has become the centerpiece of this struggle. First of all, having voted Democrat instead of Republican. And yeah, we know for us, there's very little difference between the two parties. I think this year was marked by the end of 4 years of an extremely racist, white supremacist, just horrific man. In addition to his politics or lack of, was his megalomania, where everything was about him. And I consider him criminally responsible for having led so many people to their death, not only by refusing to take a national approach to what we need. Anybody in this country knows what we need, but by lying to people and being a spokesperson for those who voted for him in 2016 leading them with lies about jobs and about open up the economy, when in fact he has caused the economy to be prolonged in this disaster by not working to flatten the curve. And yet, I think that there's a lot of hope. There was a lot of celebration the 8 days after it was clear that Biden had won. And yet, when you look at what's taken place in these days, even before the transition, it's going to take an enormous fight and a refusal by people to accept promises from Biden. It's going to have to take the activism that we're already seeing now. Protests for immigrant rights. Protests saying lift the sanctions on Cuba and Venezuela. Right now, people who've been involved in all kinds of activism, housing rights, cancel the rents, water shutoffs. Everybody's saying now's our time to fight. And that's what it'll take.
Absolutely. I think, there's some good things about the pandemic.
You might want to turn your volume down a little bit. You get an echo.
Oh, all right. Let's see. On my
your speakers.
Is that any better?
A little bit.
Let's see.
Now it's perfect.
Okay. I think that part of this is a lot of these eviction moratoriums and things are going to be expiring at some point, right? And then we'll be in a full-blown housing crisis. I mean, because a lot of cities did limit evictions, we haven't seen the damage that is, I think, coming. But we have seen something else, right? We've seen millions of people take to the streets in support of Black Lives Matter. I mean, that is an amazing development, right? Anytime you see, thousands of protests happening across the country, I mean, that's something else, and so in terms of like what forces do I see happening structurally that provide opportunities for organizing and for the left, I think the issue of racist police violence is still very much present and very much in the consciousness, because it's a continuing problem. But I think we haven't seen yet the potential of the deepening crisis economically might have in terms of people being out there demanding policies that are helpful for the average person. And I mean, this is what I really value about PSL. And I'm delighted to be on a panel with somebody that I actually voted for. I mean, that doesn't happen. So I appreciate that.
We're starting to see it. I don't know if you guys watched that. There was a clip that CNN had. I want to say it was maybe 2 months ago, where in East Texas, I believe, Southeast Texas, they actually had started some evictions, and it must have been maybe 2 or 3 months ago, because I know it was still hot. And there was an elderly woman that was being evicted, and my light just went out. And as she was being evicted, she had nowhere to go. So she was literally on this, like sitting in a chair. That was her one possession. And the person that was evicting her was begging, hey, can I just have another 24 hours for this woman? Can we give her some more time? And I think she got either another day or another week to stay in her house, but that's not saying much. And I felt like that was more of a hit piece on Trump than it was a referendum on shit policy. And I feel like a lot of people see this election as, well, we got the bad man out, so that means that all these bad things are gone as well. And I don't think they understand like the architects of the things that Trump was doing was the guy that's in office now. He was part of that administration, especially when we talk about immigrants and separating children at the border. That's either Bush era or Obama era policy. I forget which administration had laid that out, but that definitely wasn't a Trump thing. And I too am extremely frightened of when the moratoriums get lifted, because I see it where I am in Oakland, and I'm seeing it even. I now live with my wonderful girlfriend and my child, and even on this nice suburban street, which is just a few blocks down from a very well-to-do area, there's literally people living in their cars. There was a dude that boxed me in his car. He was sleeping in his car, and he was parked behind me in this driveway that I'm living in, or stay, at the house I'm staying in. I'm like, that's insane. And yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. There are already evictions taking place because a lot of the southern states, there are many places that aren't like the Bay Area or California where the moratorium is still in place. Mm-hmm. And so there were evictions in Houston where we were. That beginning of the video when there was a bulldozer and just picking up things in front of a house, that was an eviction. And because we saw 2 more homes in that neighborhood where all their belongings were out. And as I explained to people, there were TVs in the yard, couches, tables, chairs. And it was obvious that when people are evicted at this point, they don't have money to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
You go from an apartment to homeless, and you don't get out of that until there's a massive, massive program. I really think that it's incumbent upon socialists, however we describe ourselves, to not just talk about let's fight for affordable housing. There's plenty of housing right now. It's not affordable because it's being built for a profit. Mm-hmm. And yet the workers made all of this. And I think that in all of our work, we have to be more open about socialism urgently needed, and it could happen today. Mm-hmm. Of course, it needs a major struggle. We're not there yet. But literally, all the means are there to provide everybody with income right away. Mm-hmm. A house, because there's millions of homes empty. To make water and utilities possible, because, you just shouldn't be able to shut them off. And that the food is there. The problem is profits are in the way. We have to get to that perspective, because the average worker otherwise is trapped in this idea that they don't deserve it because they don't have a job. Because asking for a lot of money to take care of all these needs is like, people are trapped in these capitalist myths, when in fact we are the power. We're the ones who make everything run. And that's why I was this election campaign was not just, vote for us. It was a serious strategic decision on our part, which ended up being perfect timing in the pandemic, in this economic crisis, to reach out and to get as broad an audience as we could to mobilize people. So you asked, what is to be done? I was in South Carolina, Columbia. That was where that video was. Birmingham, Alabama, and Houston. Everywhere people were being shut off of water. How do you live without water in your home?
During a pandemic.
Drink, cook, wash your hands, and then flush the toilet, take a bath. And so when we were talking to people, they were so thrilled. Even this weekend, our people were in the street going door to door and asking people, what is your water condition? What is happening with your apartment? We have to do that, door to door, find out how we can carry on a struggle against the water departments. And I think it's a perfect struggle, because everybody in a city, you could be upper middle class, you could be escaping all this crisis, you could be doing fine, you could have a good income, working at home on a computer, but everyone understands the need for water.
And I think everybody understands that could be you. I mean, you're one little disaster away, you're one job loss away from that being you. Even if you're upper class or relatively privileged, I mean, most people are still part of the working class. There aren't that many people who have enough wealth to generate an income so that they never need to work, right? I mean, that's a very small slice of people. And I did notice that you guys that video clip started with you guys stopping an eviction or witnessing an eviction. I mean, that's very important work. And I think, for a small group of politically minded lefties, then yeah, you can talk about socialism or communism or Marxism. But, for the average person, I think you just talk about the policies. I think you just talk about, like you were saying, no one deserves to have their water shut off. No one deserves to have their stuff put out on the curb. That's inhumane. And, we are a rich enough country that we don't need to tolerate that should not be permissible. Just like we shouldn't have kids being put in cages. These things are simply not acceptable. And we go from there, right? We don't use a bunch of fancy jargon or whatever. It just, these are things that we can do for the benefit of all. Why don't we do them?
Yeah.
How do we get, and I guess that's another question. I know Gloria doesn't have much time, and I'm so, thank you again for the little time that you were able to carve out. I appreciate it.
I'll stay till 6:45.
Ah,
you get a special treat.
No, if it's okay, if you want me to be on, I have a union meeting at 7, and so I have to get ready for it.
So, well, thank you again for, like I said, taking the time to talk to me. And
no, thank you.
And I just want people to know too, like this is not some BS propaganda. So after Gloria and I talked, and I'm sure if you've watched this stream before, then you've heard me talk about this great thing that finally I got off the ground, or getting off the ground. It's called Revolutionary Histories, where we're going to have these animated short histories. And Gloria was the thing that was able to get the whole project sold, because she had agreed to do a short history on Chavez and Castro.
Can I see it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just.
But she was so busy organizing and going out to places that was getting no media attention whatsoever. She was in a flood zone in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and a lot of people know where Lake Charles is. It's like on the eastern side of the bottom of the state, and they got wiped out with a horrible hurricane. And she stayed there. You were there for what, like a week or so?
We were there for several days, and then we went back a week later to help them organize a demonstration. And we were very much in touch with the evacuees in New Orleans. We have people there, but we need more people there. This is just one disaster. They got hit again in Louisiana 2 more times. Yeah. And then we got to think about the people abroad. They just got hit by a Category 4. It was almost a 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
In Nicaragua and Honduras. They just got hit a few miles away 10 days ago. This is global warming. This is our fires in California. It's like we have got to put it all together in how we talk to people. And we have to keep producing media. My party's been producing new media programs. You have yours. This is very important. We have to keep expanding those audiences, keep projecting our perspective of fight, and also to just remind people it's only up to us. One question I really liked asking audiences was, can you tell me, do you know which politician had raised the issue of $15 an hour to make it a reality partway that made people realize, yeah, $15 an hour is just, it's necessary, at least. And people go, Elizabeth Warren? And of course, Bernie Sanders. And I go, no, not one politician would risk their career to say double the minimum wage. Because people go, a few years ago, we'd say $15 an hour. People go, that's kind of high. And those people needed $15 an hour. But then once the workers went out there, went on strike, McDonald's, Burger King, Walmart, it was like, yeah. So things seem impossible until they happen. And then they were like, why didn't it happen before? And talking about politicians, just about every metropolitan city said, oh no, okay, you can have $15, but we're going to phase it in over 5 years.
Yeah.
then you'll need $20.
Yeah. And that's where we are now, right?
Yeah. 15 is already a little bit dated. But
Yeah.
I remember the living wage movement, and I remember when that Fight for 15 slogan came out, right? And you're quite right. That came from this movement. That's an aspect of the labor movement. But I think that it empowered a person like Bernie to take that and popularize it, you know? I mean, he didn't start that, but he definitely turbocharged it, you know? And you know, he does get some credit for that and for influencing state policy. I mean, California and New York said they do it in April 2016, like right in the midst of that you know, very exciting primary race. So you know, I think but it's entered the zeitgeist, you know, it's entered our consciousness as something that needs to happen. And I think that's good, right? Because before it wasn't on the radar, you know, to the extent that it is now. And I think now lots of people are saying, well, that's, you know, now we need to go higher than that. You know, 50, you know. And
I actually think it was much more recognized before Bernie brought it up, but definitely his role in the 2016 and 2020 race were very, very important.
My mom is a Fight for 15 person. She was part of that. I want to say she might have been part of the original movement. If Mother, if you're listening, can you please comment if you were part of that original movement? I know she went all over. She still goes all over the country to organize for Fighting for 15. She's an interesting woman, to say the least. She just had a birthday not too long ago.
That's wonderful.
So here we are, and it is this kind of weird feeling. Someone said it feels like the end of Return of the Jedi after the election. Everybody was celebrating because, you know, Trump is gone. The big bad guy is gone. Darth Vader's gone, and kinda, because the ghouls are still around. So we still have people like Mitch McConnell in office, and now there's just kind of, to me, it seems like too much talk around the failings of the Democratic Party electorally. Were you guys surprised at any of their down ballot losses?
No. No. No, because Biden won because of Trump.
Yeah.
Trump got Biden elected.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's go back to the very near history. That before Super Tuesday, Biden wasn't even reaching third place. He was tanking. He was gone. Everybody said his history. Just give it up, dude, you know? And then all of a sudden it was like, wait, we can't have Bernie Sanders. He might make people expect things. And so they smashed him. They all joined together. They were, you know, like they were adopting some of the ideas of Sanders, like, oh yeah, you know, Elizabeth Warren and others kind of echoing, faint echo. And then it was gotta get him out. And really sad was it was right before the pandemic.
Yeah.
March 3rd, Super Tuesday. You never heard him again.
Yeah.
And now people are saying, bring him into the cabinet. That ain't gonna happen.
No.
Biden doesn't want him in the cabinet.
Do you think we're gonna get another round of any sort of maybe checks or maybe some sort of relief, maybe more small business loans, with another CARES package coming out probably in the new year once the new administration steps in office?
What do you think?
Honestly, I think the first thing Joe Biden is going to do is not that. I think the first thing he's going to do is have some sort of titular mask mandate that's going to sound like a mandate, but it's going to have kind of like Trump's moratorium, which wasn't really a moratorium. And I think it's going to say something along the lines of everybody needs to have a mask unless, and that's going to be the first big thing he does. And there's going to be either Fauci gets some sort of promotion or he'll do all the talking in any sort of coronavirus meetings or press conferences. And I think that's going to take away from the discourse about bailing out real people. And I think the only people that'll be preaching that discourse will be Fox News.
I think the Biden administration is definitely going to pivot to austerity. Although I think that it's interesting that there's been discourse going on about canceling student loans.
Yeah.
You know, I like hearing that personally because I have lots of student loans from grad school. So, but I'm like, you know, that seems like red meat that you throw to your liberal base, you know? I mean, because like, who does that help, right? It helps the college educated. Now, I'm not going to say it only helps, right? I mean, this is a good thing. It would be good to cancel student loans. You know, there is a significant number of, you know, working poor and middle class people that would be helped by that. So, but it's not. It wouldn't be top on my list. Like if I said, well, you know, what one policy change could you do that would meaningfully improve the lives of tens of millions of working people, I would say, well, let's just do the 15, right? I mean, given that we have the consciousness built already, and we have the, you know, you could get that through Congress, and again, there's like 40 million people in the United States that would affect, right? So that's a big ticket item, right? I mean, I'm not against the loan cancellation. I'm for it, but if we wanted bang for the buck, you know. That's where I would go, but I don't think the Biden administration is really going to push for much of anything in terms of how it's going to affect the ordinary working person. I think that they are going to perform. They're going to do performative wokeness, but they're not going to actually deliver anything.
I think you're going to public option. I think you're going to public within the first 100 days. I think you get a public option.
That would be great. That would be nice, but. You know, I think minor reforms of the ACA are all that's on the table for healthcare.
Yeah.
I think that the $10,000, that's the figure I have heard about cancellation of student debt. I was thinking about that yesterday, and I thought it was like supposed to be for the poorest kids. But you know, $10,000 is a drop in the bucket in student debt now. And the other is that middle-class families, those who don't qualify for student aid, they bankrupt themselves, the parents do. Because it's the idea you have to pay a lot of money to have a good education. You have to put yourself in debt for your kid. There's no guarantee of a job. I think it's just this $1.6 trillion debt at the beginning of the year has ballooned. And it's an easy crumbs to give. The pandemic, I don't think that he can effectively squelch this so-called rebellion by the right wing, by the Trumpers, but also a lot of workers who are like, I need my job, open up the economy. They're trapped. You can't have an effective fight against a pandemic, which I think needs a lockdown, unless you give everybody an income. Now, if the Democrats had the majority in the Senate, let's assume they win, are they going to fight for that? Because they got the power now. If they have the power in the House and the Senate, are they going to do it? It's been this excuse for them in a way. You have to take on the banks. Well, Biden is a banker's banker. Biden comes from Delaware, you know, Mr. MasterCard. And which, you know, of course, benefits from student loans. So, again, we're talking about the fundamentals of this system and how much of a struggle is needed. It's possible. Look at the 30s. It took a few years before things finally took hold, and the strikes and the thousands of strikes, wildcat strikes, until the right to unionize, until Social Security. And we're going to need that kind of a push. But I don't think it'll come from the president. I think he'll raise expectations. He may raise expectations. Now, if the Republicans win the majority of the Senate, back to the same old thing. We're going to have to, okay, everybody shut up. Don't be talking about socialism in the Democratic Party. We got to get elected in 2 years and 4 years.
Well, the quote unquote squad is expanding. Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman and Mondaire Jones and Who else got elected? I think DSA won like 70% of their elections that they were running people in. So I feel like the word, and you guys are OGs. You guys have been saying the word when you were definitely losing jobs and nobody was putting you on. There wasn't this much left media 5 years ago. Do you feel that socialism, communism, Marx are less bad words today than they were even 5 years ago, let's say?
I would say, yeah. I think that a lot of the anti-communism of, that really began in earnest in the 40s, and it's continued to this day, but it's much weaker. It doesn't feel as salient or as relevant. Maybe it's not as present. I'm not sure, but it's not as strong for whatever reason. People are educating themselves, and I don't think that they're willing to take, that kind of very surface level propaganda, Stalin and Mao are worse than Hitler type of stuff. I think, once you look into the history yourself, you start to see, well, gosh, the narrative that I've been told is not at all true about these countries. But even so, it doesn't matter, right? Because I think, just like Gloria said earlier, right, this is on us to achieve a better society and a fair economy. And I think people, especially young people, get that, and are like, look, don't give me a bunch of isms to tell me I can't do this, that, or the other, right? I mean, here's some policies which would improve the lives of millions of people. Let's do them, And I think alternative media is very much a part of that, because you have options to educate yourself, and just to be in contact and in conversation, to learn from people. I mean, we learn a lot from each other. That definitely didn't exist in the recent past.
You really hit on something right there about people can look things up about socialism. We're getting so many young people who are joining, like a lot of young people are contacting us to join.
Yeah.
And when you talk with them or when you read their applications, they were searching on their own. At 13, 12 years old, 14, they were like, I knew the system didn't work. And many who grew up in conservative households in the rural parts of the country, it's amazing, Missouri, Arkansas, Mississippi. And so I started to look things up. Or I got involved in the Bernie Sanders and I was really disillusioned. And so I looked for real socialism. I'm reading Marx. You know how many kids are reading Marx and Lenin? And I'm like,
not an easy read. I mean,
like,
it is not an easy read.
And I'm like, do you understand it? And it's like, I'm trying. It's really exciting. Now, these are youth who tend to be, they have the computer, they have the experience of internet, they're skilled. A lot of them are in college now where they're doing this, but they're all the workers who are struggling. I met so many people like that. And they have heard all this. They have old ideas. Can I give you an example?
Please.
I was in Walmart in Columbia, South Carolina. We were there just before our rally. And we decided we're going to go inside the stores because there's nobody in the streets because of the pandemic. We walked into Walmart and we started handing out cards to everybody, our palm card about the campaign, to workers and customers. They were listening. I walked up to a woman, she's probably 70, working at Walmart, a white woman, and obviously poor, and I said, ma'am, I'm running for president. You don't have to vote for Biden or Hunt. Biden or Trump. And she said, no. And in a very nice way, she goes, no, we can't have socialism. We can't pay any more taxes. And I said, ma'am, under socialism, you wouldn't be paying any taxes. You wouldn't pay sales tax. You wouldn't pay property tax. You wouldn't pay a parking ticket. You wouldn't pay in cutbacks, because all the wealth of these trillionaires, Amazon, Walmart, all of these people, they're making hundreds of billions in a pandemic and they're not paying taxes.
Mm-mm.
And so I said, and we do the work. So
Mhm.
all of that would provide health care for you. So I'm telling her this, and she said, I really like the way you talk. How do I look you up? And I said, right here on the card, right there, there's our website. I'm going to look you up. That just like in an instant. But that's not the only person who talks about taxes. I mean, too many stories to take up this time. I don't want to dominate this. But it really hit me how many people are captive who are poor. And, actually, these are people who actually are the ones who don't actually pay that many taxes, but they don't have tax credits, that kind of myth thing about tax credits. They're people, of course, taxes in their income, it takes a bigger chunk, but it's that thing about tax, it's that mantra, taxes, taxes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Taxes are too high relative to what we get from the government.
Yeah, it's true. We don't get anything, but
yeah,
real
we
criminals.
Conservatives to dominate the anti-tax discourse. We need to take that issue because we could get a lot more, in terms of social services for a lot less money. I mean, one of the great things about the defund the police movement that's come out of the BLM protests and so on is people are starting to be like, defund. What do we actually spend on police? And then it's like, we spend what? Oh my, 25 to 40% in a lot of cities. That is insane, right? Like, no wonder we can't get cities to actually do anything, right? Because they spend a huge amounts of money on a highly militarized, force, right? The police force.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to like, what do we really spend on the military? The Department of Defense budget is only the beginning. I mean, military spending is hidden in all of these places throughout the federal budget, right? So imagine the possibilities, right? If we could free up some of that money, we could cut taxes, as you say, right, and deliver the goods in a much more comprehensive way.
And tax the rich. People don't realize that nuclear weapons industry is not in the defense budget. It's in the Department of Energy. So I really hate to do this, but I need to leave. And it's been wonderful being with both of you. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Gloria, thank you so much. I appreciate your friendship and everything that you do. And Phoenix, you want to say bye to Gloria? No? Okay. He's stressed out. He's 2 years old.
The one time you want him to interrupt and he's not doing it.
Oh yeah. He's like, oh God, again, Dad.
I see a chat here, tax the rich. I say expropriate the rich. All this rockets going up in space, Elon Musk and all their toys off people's labor. Yeah. Anyway, bye, you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gloria. Take care.
Take care.
Oh, that was awesome. Phoenix, Grandma's here. He doesn't care. My mom wants me to tell my son that she's here. He doesn't care. He doesn't care because he is watching his favorite show, hanging out with his mother, and he gives no fucks about what I'm doing here right now.
Is that your mom on the chat there? Was that Phoenix? I'll come on.
Yeah, that's my mom. Everybody add my mom on your social media. She's actually kind of funny. She really is, and she's an activist. She's a badass, but at the end of the day, she definitely is a mom / grandma. So it's not like she doesn't complain to me about shit that moms complain about, right?
Right. That's all part of it.
Doctor, yeah, she says yes, right? Yes, she does. She's ready to yell at me right now. I haven't even done anything.
Moms keep this world running.
and you know what's so funny? I wasn't joking when I said Gloria we have a very a mother-son relationship. She does check up on me every so often and ask me how I'm doing, and she knows I've been fighting with unemployment, and she's just been on my ass. Like, you gotta fight, Jason.
Don't let those bastards get away with paying you.
It's like you hear it in stereo because I got Pam Davis and Gloria La Riva both yelling at me in stereo. So it's good. It gets you off your ass. That's some strong ass women. Just beating common sense into you.
Isn't it crazy to see Marxism trending one day and then
Karl Marx was trending today
under K-pop of all the things.
I didn't get that.
Yeah, under K-pop. That's apparently what set it off. Was
that didn't make sense to me. But I was trying to take advantage. Twitter to me is like funny because some of the shit people say is funny.
Oh yeah, it's hilarious.
And following you on Twitter has been like, it's been an experience, Dr. Bair. Because you definitely,
it's a trip, man.
Okay, so if you don't follow Dr. Bair on Twitter, we got to put your Twitter handle up there right now. I'm going to put it up before this is over.
See, look, here's somebody who said in chat, K-pop fans were saying Marx is sexy and that he was sexier than some K-pop star, and the young Marx, the old Marx, and whatever.
Really?
Nice to meet you too, Mrs. Davis. Thanks for coming on the chat here.
Oh, every week, man. Every week to talk shit. So I see that trending right as I see Charlie Kirk trending.
Right. Yeah,
and I guess he went on some tirade about how the left wants to kill Thanksgiving, which I thought was, like, at what point are people going to be like, all right, dude, I get who you are now. You're that tweaker that hangs out at the 7-Eleven. That's always got a weird conspiracy theory. And your first thought is, how do you still have a cell phone to watch YouTube? Like, that's who Charlie Kirk is at this point. Like, he even looks all cokey.
We need to study, though, because, the right has some very effective trolls and propagandists,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these are people who are experts at getting attention. I mean, yeah, they don't get attention for good reasons usually. But, like, to think that people are going to be largely swayed by reason and logic, I'm afraid that's naive. Like, people are swayed by jokes. People are swayed by, being yourself, being authentic. And I mean, that's one of the fun things about social media, right? You can get on there and tell a joke or whatever. I mean, I didn't realize that there was an interest in this, because I come from academia, right? And in academia, you kind of hide, right? You don't go to everybody and be like, damn it, I'm a Marxist, like you try to be like reasonable and, hey, I'm the kind of person you want to hire and give tenure, right? I mean, that's what you do. You get used to hiding, and that is what it is, right? I mean, we all make compromises, right? But I don't do that on Twitter, like, I think I let it all hang out, and there's something liberating about that, right? Like, does everyone love it? No. I mean, people will step to me. I mean, I've never lost a debate on Twitter before, of course.
So people come. Okay, so this is what I was trying to say. So Dr. Bair will say something, and usually it's hey, I put up a lecture that I did, or sometimes he'll make a funny quip, but usually it's like, hey, this is bad, or here's my smart guy take on this thing, right? And I'm like, yeah, and I'm like liking it and retweeting it and liking it and retweeting it, right? And every so often somebody steps in the middle of what he's saying and they try to contradict him or call him out, and he is not for the bullshit at all. Like, I would assume that you would just like mute those people, because recently I had said something to a friend who's an artist, and he's been doing this. He did this Inktober thing where every day in October he drew a caricature of a different kind of figure on the right. And we were having a conversation about Andrew Yang, him and we both don't like Andrew Yang. And then all of a sudden we didn't at Andrew Yang. We didn't fucking hashtag Andrew Yang. Him and I just were set, and all of a sudden all these Yang people just came out of nowhere And every time I'd say something back to one of them trying to be Dr. Bear, then 5 more would come in and be like, but Andrew Yang did this. I'm like, man, fuck all y'all, first of all, because this is the internet.
It's stressful to get piled on in Twitter. I mean, I think it triggers your like your heart rate and blood pressure and stuff. I mean, kind of like you're in a fight, you know. I think it causes that kind of stress response, and you know, you just have to know, like, all right, yeah, it's gonna stress me to like have an argument with a stranger on Twitter, you know. It does. I mean, let's be honest, right? Whether you win or lose, you know, if you get into a fight, there's no easy fight, you know. I mean, like, if you win, it's still stressful, you know. Like, I mean, sorry to bring that metaphor there, but you know, it's that's just what I think of, you know. And you always have to think about, is it worthwhile, you know? Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, but it's also like, you know, you're not going to change a person's mind necessarily, but you know, you don't let things go that aren't true or that shouldn't be let go, right? I mean,
yeah,
you know, you don't let somebody get up there and say Mao killed 100 million people or something like this. Like that's not remotely correct, you know. I mean, like, if you want to talk numbers, we'll get into the numbers, right? But you know, whether you're going to change that person's mind hardly matters, because then you find people go through these threads, people read them, you know, people like to hear a defense of socialism or whatever, right? Of whatever it is you're talking about. I mean, you know, I think you try to do it in good faith, but that doesn't mean you don't do jokes in there, you know.
That's my thing. I think that there's too much of there's too much of an overeducated discourse, and it almost speaks to a certain class of people. And that's why I wanted to play that video of Gloria in South Carolina, because I felt like her campaign was actually getting to the people. Like, I want to get the people in this movement, real ass people that have real ass people problems.
I love how he was talking to people and, you know, showing them stuff, and they're like, yeah, that would be helpful.
Because you know what, to your point, man, the right wing has been in the church basements for decades.
Yeah.
For decades. And let's not act like the church is just a right wing haven. There's a lot of it in the church, but there's some leftists that come out of Christianity. You know, Cornel West probably being one of the biggest that I can think of off the top of my head right now that's living. You know, the plowshares movement, you know, they're literally going to jail for their beliefs. So
the poor people's movement, I mean,
the poor people's movement
I mean, Jesse Jackson, even, right? The Rainbow Coalition and
Chris Hedges.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're a Hedges fan or at all.
Yeah, I like Chris Hedges. I like Chris Hedges. You know, he does a lot with Rick Wolf, and you know, they're on each other's platforms and things. Yeah, I don't think you let any space be unchallenged, you know?
Thank you.
I mean, there's the church has, like, when I think about socialism and communism, I think about what would a society be like if it were based on sharing and cooperation instead of exploitation, right? I mean, and every society has these moments, you know, there are these moments of sharing, there are these moments of cooperation. And that's a beautiful thing. That should be uplifted. That should be celebrated, you know. And Christianity does some of this, right? I mean, the early Christians were like, "Hey, you want to come and join our gang? You got to leave. You got to sell off your riches and give it to the benefit of the community," right? I mean, there's some really heavy, you know, communal messages, and you know, like this person said, liberation theology is an attempt to, you know, investigate that and get serious about it. You know, there's also attempts to make Christianity seem more pro-capitalist, or, you know, it has a lot of roots of being pro-feudalism, you know. I mean, that's a lot of the history of it. But, you know, it's like every religion is a mix of messages, and, you know, we should be focusing on certain ones of those because, you know, that's a space that, you know, we can contest, that we you know, speak to.
There's a great book. I don't know if you ever read it. I think the author's name is James Cone. I always want to say Roy Cohen, James Cohn, The Cross and the Lynching Tree.
I haven't read it.
Ooh. And he was a socialist theologian as well. He passed away, I want to say, last year. Oh man, it's a great book. I'll have to have it next week on my recommended book segment. Someone says, rest in peace, Michael Brooks. He knew how to be funny and address real people in a real way. I agree. I've got to have some people from his show on my show. And yeah, my rest in peace, Michael Brooks. Gone too soon.
Since we've got Yang up and the UBI and whatever, since this is in the mix a little bit in the comments and stuff, I wanted to say the UBI is a good idea and should be part of socialism in the future, but it's not the only thing that should be done. And it's not even necessarily the first thing that should be done, you know? So I feel like I've got some sympathy for it as a plank, but I think it's also kind of dangerous because if you leave the basic structures of capitalism intact and you do the UBI, I mean, that's just like putting a Band-Aid over a gunshot wound, you know? You don't do that. It's not going to really improve things. It might even make it worse, you know? So we have to just kind of keep in mind a socialistic style policy, which the UBI unquestionably is, right? Is not enough in isolation, right? I mean, as much as this would be a step forward, right? I mean, we could say the same thing about any of these things, right? Like raising the minimum wage. Minimum wage is a socialistic style thing too. You know, it's limited and it's a good idea to do. But again, you know, it's good to just have a comprehensive approach, right? We don't want to just do one thing and then think like, oh, okay, that's going to be great. That'll eliminate all the problems of capitalism or something. It won't, you know?
That was my problem with Andrew Yang as well. I felt like the way he was approaching UBI was, as a lot of people were saying, that started to come in my defense, was that he was trying to get rid of certain social services and also his whole goal was to protect capitalism at the end of the day. And I felt like bail out his failing friends in the tech sector with, you know, that had companies like Uber and Lyft. And I think the conversation had started because someone had brought up Andrew Yang and UBI, and we were kind of talking about, well, if this guy is such a friend to labor, why doesn't he throw some of his millions at the No on 22 campaign? And he didn't. Because that's not his
Prop 22 passed. I felt so disappointed in California when I saw that. I was like, there is no way this piece of shit legislation is going to pass. And then it passed. And I'm like, oh, what the fuck?
We always have to remember that it's not like they were unionizing those places, right?
Yeah, I mean, there was an effort going on, but I feel like
there was.
You know, it's kind of like you know, the big push was, are they going to be allowed to be viewed as independent contractors or employees? I mean, you had to be recognized as employees to, I mean, that it felt like that was part of the struggle to then unionize, right? I mean, you can unionize independent contractors as well. I mean, you know, the Screen Actors Guild is actually a good kind of example of that.
But the bill that had passed that was going to give them certain rights, one of the caveats in that bill, AB 5, was that you couldn't unionize. So you could have all the labor rights as an employee, but you couldn't unionize. And that wasn't like why those drivers voted against it. It was the fear mongering of, if you become an employee, your worst fear comes to life. So if you drive Uber because you worked at Walmart, or you work at Walmart, or insert shit minimum wage or slightly above minimum wage job here, and you drive with one of these services, they were telling you that, okay, well, now it's going to be like a regular job. So you're looking at it from the perspective of, now I got two shitty jobs. Like, this job sucks driving this car, but I've been sold the lie of independence and entrepreneurship. Right. So you're fucking up my fantasy, man.
Yeah.
I'm reading all these inspirational quotes every morning.
I know, hustle culture and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, I really feel that was, Well, you're here in California. You know, I don't know how disconnected you are if you only have like a phonograph player in your place. And
I would
don't
like to get a
watch
phonograph
television.
player again. Back and that takes me back. You know, I don't have a record player. Do you do vinyl? I mean, you know,
Hell no.
no.
No. My mom is listening right now. I ruined so many of her records.
I feel like having vinyl these days is almost like a rich person's pursuit.
Fuck yeah, it is.
I wish I was rich enough to have a vinyl collection. I don't think I am.
Like seriously. So my band, not this one, Bitter Lake, but the one before, Le Fin Absolute du Monde, we pressed vinyl, and I think it was like 500 copies, cost us like $2,500.
Wow.
And we had to wait like 8 months for it.
Damn, that's expensive too.
Yeah, and you're sitting there, you already paid the money, and you're sitting, and then we toured on that record for probably a year and change, and I had swore that we sold it all. And as I'm cleaning out the studio that I'm leaving, I found a box of like 20 records.
Dude, I want one of those records. For being on a show ever, please.
Oh yeah,
dope as hell. Okay, so a quote, a comment here about Walmart and Amazon unionization. You know, what this reminds me of is kind of like the history of the labor movement and how, you know, there's the rise of these giant corporations, and then unionization is sort of, you know, it's like a big corporation is a big target for unionization, you know, and because you can organize within this pretty big structure. And I agree. I mean, you know, Walmart has done huge amounts of anti-labor and anti-union activities. Amazon too. You know, these are hard places to unionize, but a lot of times, you know, it's like the hard-fought gains can be really special. You know, like, because if a seed can be planted on that soil, you know, it could be planted anywhere.
I also feel like it's kind of like getting people to the point where unions aren't a bad thing. You know, that Hoffa biopic did not paint unions in the best light, and there definitely is a lot to be said about the Hoffa years and organized labor, or even organized labor post the New Deal.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people that came into unions after that time that don't really have, they didn't get those great big gains that people got during the Hoffa years as far as union labor. They're like, man, these people just take money on my check. And I think that because they never worked in, you know, in a really bad non-union environment. Like I was in the Gulf of Mexico in a non-union environment, and that's a frightening place to be. People die there and no one gives a fuck.
Yeah.
You know,
or you've never worked for a really strong union, you know? I mean, like at RCC has a faculty association, a faculty union. It's probably the strongest union of any place I've ever worked. I mean, it's unbelievable. And it's just because we've had a few, you know, faculty members who fought for it tirelessly over a long period of time, you know? And that's almost like an accident, right? Like, if you didn't have that, then you have a weak union, you know. And what do weak unions do? Like, they collaborate, you know, with the administration, with the bosses, like when it suits them. You know, they play favorites. They do cronyism. You know, they do various forms of corruption, and it's not helpful to the average worker. I mean, it's still better than not having anything, right? They do provide some protection, but you know, when you have like a really strong union, I mean, it's like night and day, you know, in terms of you feel protected. You are protected on a very fundamental level, and you have an organization that's advocating for your interests night and day, you know. I mean, that's a world of difference from, you know, the other colleges and universities that I've worked at.
And where else have you what other colleges were you at?
Well, let's see. I worked before I was at RCC. So I've a checkered past with that. I started at RCC right out of grad school in 2001. Worked for 3 years. I was in a tenure process, whatever. I was about to get tenure. I left and then taught at City College of San Francisco.
Hey.
And yeah, which was great. I was there for 5 years. Then I left academic teaching altogether and ran a nonprofit teaching meditation and stuff. So sometimes, I mean, this is a funny thing that will happen sometimes on Twitter. People will be like, "Oh, you're a professor? That means you obviously have no experience outside academia, and you're like a baby who has never, seen the outside world or something like this," right?
Oh, that's fucked up.
Yeah, whatever. That's what people have. I was the executive director of a growing nonprofit, and I had to learn all kinds of stuff from coding to marketing and whatever. And then I came back to teaching. I taught at the University of Southern Maine for a year as like a kind of a highly paid adjunct, which was nice. I mean, you can work as a low paid adjunct, and that sucks,
Yeah.
And then I ended up getting a tenure track job at RCC, and I was, I was thrilled. I was like, okay, this is great. I also felt some survivor guilt. I felt like, my God, there's, how many thousands of low paid adjuncts who have PhDs and whatever, who can't, get tenure track jobs. And this will be my third one that I just got tenure, This is my third go around. I feel like, what have I done to deserve this? I mean, I'm good at what I do, but it's luck really, and to have like a decent life be a matter of stupendous luck just seems wrong to me, right? It should seem like everybody should have a decent life, right? It shouldn't be like, oh, you hit the lottery and now you can have, a modicum of financial security or something.
That's funny because I want to say the first time I physically met Gloria, that's like the first thing she goes like, now is the time for socialism. That was like the first, and she said it just like that, very like don't you see, like, can't you see with all this shit around?
Yeah,
now is the time.
It really is.
This pandemic, and I think that's another reason why people are starting to wake up to the idea of it and be more curious about it, because everybody did kind of get left in the cold, right?
Yeah,
like for the most part. If you lived in the outskirts in a red state in rural America, the 1,200 was huge. The extra 600 was even bigger. Your state opened up quicker. You have less cases of COVID. I get it, but a lot of people don't live there. They are sparsely populated for a reason. So these major metropolitan areas where people are stuck, it's rough.
You know what that makes me think of, back to that kind of topic of the election, is like when you look at these red and blue maps. I hate the red and blue thing. Like when that started being discussed, I was like, what a simplistic way of looking at politics,
Mm-hmm.
But there is something useful about it. When you look at, like, if you drill down into a state and you go county by county, and you look at like, what are the red counties and what are the blue counties? You know what the divide is? It's urban versus rural.
Yeah.
We have a huge urban versus rural divide, and life is like very different in cities and urban areas versus rural areas, right? I mean, and that's like what you spoke to, just touched on that, right? It's different with regard to the pandemic. I think now we're at a point where the penetration of COVID-19 is far greater in the rural areas. And, we're seeing a lot more cases in those areas. But that's the huge divide, and I think in rural areas, there's a sense that people are like, what we're doing is not working,
Mm-hmm.
Fuck the system. And
Mm-hmm.
Trump is a vote for fuck the system. It's not even a vote for Trump, and like, is part of it racism? Sure it is. This is a deeply racist country, right? I mean, that's for hundreds of years, right? I mean, that doesn't go away just because you have more college educated liberal whites, right? I mean, that it doesn't go away at all, right? I mean, so, racism played into it, sure. But I think the rejection of the status quo is really the thing that we need to take as an electoral lesson, if there's any lesson here, right?
And that's it. But isn't that the opposite of what all these talking heads are talking about?
Yeah.
Right. The talking heads are going, well, it's because AOC said socialism. It's because of this liberal faction of the Democratic Party, and it's because they didn't embrace certain things enough. It's like, look, no one listened to Trump, and I feel like it's because the people that talk the most on the internet, on fucking TV, live in either New York or LA.
Yeah. And they're part of
in a fucking bubble.
Or 5%, or maybe even the top 1%, you know? They're
depending on who it is. And they left, if they're from the sticks, they left that place a long time ago. And they don't look back. I got to spend years in the sticks touring. Not in a bus, in a rental car at first. Then we upgraded to a van. And I slept on these people's floors. You know, I some of them even took me to their houses of worship after shows. So interesting shit. But I saw that shit coming in 2015 when he started gaining some steam, and it was scary because he was the thing that the Republican Party had needed, and the Democratic Party hasn't had a charismatic figure since Barack Obama. I watched Barack Obama answer a question during a press briefing. I don't know why I watched it. It just showed up on, your YouTube feed, things show up. And the account that I have actually isn't for the show. It's actually from my old band. And so I was going to posting your video on, I'm doing all this shit. So this conversation pops up of Barack Obama answering this question. And it took him 11 minutes to answer it because he's thorough. He's highly intelligent. He can get his message across and make you feel good about it. And the Democratic Party doesn't have anyone that can do that doesn't get a lot of hate. I think Gavin Newsom isn't bad at it, but people hate him just to hate him.
Well, I think that people hate, people hate politicians more than ever because people are like, okay, especially the smart, slick ones,
Mm-hmm.
Because they're like, okay, this person is good at spinning a narrative,
Mm-hmm.
And what are they trying to get me to believe? I mean, is it going to be something that's contrary to my interests? I mean, I feel like that's the kind of vibe, and that Trump was clever enough to tap into this and say, oh, people are at this historic level of distrust. Let me speak to that, right? And he did speak to that, and
in their language.
Yeah. In a simple, very rambling and dishonest fashion, but still he's speaking to the issue, right? He's saying, look, the system isn't working for you. And I think that's really what gave him traction at very critical early point.
Yeah.
In the Republican race when he didn't have any money, and now it's very different, right? Now they had the money to blanket the airwaves, and the Trump campaign did some very sophisticated stuff, which we on the left should actually study. I mean, we should look at how they employ propaganda, not in terms of the content, of course not, right? The content is horrible, but in terms of the message style, right? How do they reach people? And how do you convey something about values in a short way, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's a lot to be said for that. I think the left needs to adopt some of those tactics because politics is a lot more about, your vision. It's a lot more about your values than it is about your, mental constructs and whatever, The mental constructs are there as a way of communicating, who you are and what you believe in. That needs to be more put to the forefront, I think.
I wanted to read this comment. Hoffa's mentor was a guy named Farrell Dobbs. Dobbs was a socialist. I think a socialist was trying to write. Maybe a communist party even. Hoffa was a departure from Dobbs' beliefs. Also, Bill Fletcher has a great book, Solitary Divided, begins with the change to win split. The book deals in part with the exclusive nature of unions. I think that attitude is a reason for the disconnect with the public and unions. That's from Matthew Mateo Pinkerton on Facebook. I haven't read that book, but I'm friends with Bill Fletcher Jr. and I've just been itching to get him on. Should I get him on? Matthew, I'm asking you, should I try to have Bill Fletcher on the show? And my mom says, our county graduated to the purple tier today. Hunker down, people. Please wear a mask. California COVID-19 case count is over 1 million. We are second to Texas. That's frightening. Most media personalities on legacy media make 30 grand a day, more than I make in a year. Shit.
No. How do we get on legacy media?
That's the question. What do I got to say? Do I got to pull a Candace Owens? Because I can.
Oh no, don't say that, man.
I have no problem saying the N-word. In the great words of Paul Mooney, I say it 100 times a day just to keep my teeth white.
Candace Owens is the reason why Marxism was trending the other day. I mean, that one tweet.
Oh, was she? What did she say?
Well, she said something about how, because Harry Styles was wearing a dress.
Oh, the feminism.
Right. That was the tweet that set it off.
So wait a minute. You're telling me that Marxism is about some dude in a boy band wearing a dress, like when he wrote all those effing books, right? When he wrote Das Kapital, there's volumes of that. The secret message and all that shit. What had nothing to do with like equality and exploitation. It was all about, I think at the end of the day, dudes just need to wear dresses.
Yeah, I mean, we need to get more rich white guys on the cover of magazines in dresses. That'll.
Like he saw that coming. Like that was her whole thing. Like this is all the way I watched. So I didn't know who Candace Owens was, and someone that I know shared a Candace Owens video. This was years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and it was a video of her at a college campus. And she was with Charlie Kirk, and it was a Turning Points USA, and it was Turning Points USA video about leaving the plantation. And her whole message was a message of how the Democratic Party has kind of done Black people wrong. What's funny about that message and the people that condemn that message, and I watched her actually on a panel maybe a year ago with like Puffy and Killer Mike and T.I., and her and T.I. went back and forth. The rhetoric that she was echoing was very reminiscent of 90s Black, I don't want to say liberation, because it really wasn't a liberation movement, but like what you would call woke. That's a lot of what it sounded like. Very bootstrappy. We don't need these people. These people got us on this welfare, and they're the ones that got us on it. We need to get off it. When we look in the streets and we see all these Black people fucked up, it's the Democrats that did this,
right?
And then they throw out some Malcolm X quote, and it's like, for a lot of people, it's like, fuck.
What a move! I mean, to take that kind of Black liberation, Black nationalist spirit or style, and then apply it to like being a Trump Republican. I mean, what do you think Malcolm X would say about that? I mean, if he was on this panel, I
think Malcolm X would have some curse words to say.
Yeah, right. I mean, he actually does say a lot of good stuff about, liberals co-opting the movement and, all this stuff. I mean, and he has great stuff to say about socialism and the need for structural change, and that it's not just an individual matter. Of course, like Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam are big into self-reliance and, building your confidence and self-esteem. And this stuff is all vital, but it's not a good substitute for societal changes. And I don't think any one of those people would say it is,
But that's the thing. The messaging gets all misconstrued. And if you even watch the Malcolm X movie, all of the socialism in Malcolm X is gone in that movie. Love the movie. If it came on right now, I'd watch it.
It's a great movie. Yeah.
Love the soundtrack.
I haven't seen it for years, so I'm trying to remember, but
you know what? Go back and watch it. It'll fuck you up.
Okay, I'll do that. Like, okay, you said Boys in the Hood.
Boys in the Hood, yeah. So everybody that's watching right now, I'm hoping I can get this episode done next week. I'm trying to arrange everybody on it because this conversation I've been having on the low for a while now. Go back and watch Boys in the Hood. The shit is on Netflix. I want y'all to go back and watch Boys in the Hood. It is an advertisement for the 1994 crime bill. It starts off with the black on black crime narrative. That is the first scene of the movie.
Well, remember that scene where like Lawrence Fishburne's character breaks it down and
the gentrification?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, that was, it has its moments.
But go back and watch that scene now.
All right.
Because I was there. Hey, you talking to somebody that was in the theater that was, yeah. Like I was, we all clapped when that shit happened. I cried at the end when Ricky got shot and was sad there, confused on why the fuck they brought him home to his mom. Who does that?
God, if there was
his ass
in there, then that person has a heart of stone. I mean,
I think we should take him back to mama's. He just got shot.
So awful.
But when you watch that scene, the gentrification scene, which is so it's a great scene, right? It leaves out this whole part of how. And it becomes a mythical thing of like, well, white people just come in and they plant guns in the neighborhood and then they leave. And they give us liquor stores and then they leave. And it's like, that's how it happens. Like, that's it. There's no deindustrialization. There's no, but I guess it's a boring ass, like, well, you see what happened was.
Well, it doesn't do a good job of saying what's next or what do you do,
No.
I think that I remember this one scene in Malcolm X being like, there was this kind of moment of awakening, right?
Mm-hmm.
That I see, God, it's been a long time since I've seen that movie.
Go back again, beautifully shot. One of my favorite soundtracks is Malcolm X soundtrack. But when you rewatch it, you're like, and again, and I can't say this enough, you can't tell a man's life in 2.5 hours. We're gonna combine some people, we're gonna miss some things.
Yeah. I would make a pitch though for people to read the Autobiography of Malcolm X, which is, I think, still a really excellent book to, just give you that, much more in-depth kind of reading.
Oh, definitely.
Because that book does go into his interest in socialism, much more. I mean, I still think it's, it could say more for my taste, but it doesn't shrink from that, let's say.
Well, if you think about, if you go back and watch that movie, it doesn't really get into his kind of global understanding of just black, if you want to say black liberation. You kind of miss that. You're like, oh, for some reason he's in Africa and he's talking about Patrice Lumumba, but I don't really know who the fuck Patrice Lumumba is because we haven't explained him.
Yeah.
And I guess he's mad he got shot, but who the fuck is he to get shot anyway? And that's the chickens that come home to roost line.
Yeah.
Is because I think Kennedy gets shot around the same time as Patrice Lumumba. I think. And now I need to go back and watch Malcolm X, but definitely watch Boys in the Hood.
Are we not even going to make a pitch to say like read Capital or, read Lenin or, any of that?
So I'll be honest. And for the people watching, if you're commenting in the captions area, I'm going to need you to comment on this because I definitely need support for what I'm about to say. I need your support. So Dr. Bair actually, I kind of feel like a jerk for not putting up your YouTube page. I will. Gives lectures on YouTube. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to ask him if he'd be down. And he's a busy man, anybody with curtains that crazy is a busy man.
It's a busy pattern.
The busy pattern, busy man. To do little like I already asked him to help come in on the animated revolutionary histories, but what I wanted to do was I wanted to ask if there was any way he could get into certain things because there's there's, I don't want to say questions I have, but questions I have about Lenin and Marx. And I wanted to do like no more than like maybe a 5-10 minute little series where maybe monthly I can ask you to kind of extrapolate a Marx or Lenin lesson. Uh-oh, he just froze up. See, hopefully it's because so many questions were coming in.
Yeah, I'll do it. I mean, you got to make time to educate the masses. I mean, that's that's the work right there. Are you getting me here? You pick me up?
I got you now. Yes, it is coffee in my cup. I only drink coffee. Jessica just made a bunch of coffee because I am very worn out before I talk to these people. Because I really wanted to do that, and because I've been watching a lot of your lessons. So if you see any likes from Le Fin Absolute du Monde, that's me.
Good. Thank you for watching. I mean, I turned off the comments on all my things because, this is like for my classes. And I was like, I can't have my students be exposed to the kind of comments that on YouTube, right? So, you have the option, right? You can turn off the comments. And I'm like, maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe I should leave them on. And no, I'm just going to,
But these are like lectures. You're not saying anything crazy. I see what you're saying because you're talking. Okay.
I mean, what do people think is crazy? I think that everything I say is incredibly reasonable, but that's not necessarily how everyone perceives it.
But you do a real interesting series that I kind of wanted to. I actually wanted to like take it, and I was trying to figure out how I could like steal it and put it up on my page.
Wait,
how can I take this and put it on my page? And be like, because I thought it was interesting. Dr. Bair did a whole series on Russia and kind of the fall of the Soviet Union, and so that's what kind of got me going. Oh, this guy puts his lectures online. How dope would it be if we could have like a monthly lesson where people like literally signed up for the lesson, and we did it because he does it like it's kind of funny. Because sometimes it's him with a piece of paper and he's right. It's like John Madden. If you guys ever watch football, and boom, communism, boom.
That's kind of like my in-person class because like I write on the whiteboard, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I write a lot because what I learned over the years is if I write stuff down, the class gets the message like, oh, I should write this stuff down too, And if I just say a bunch of stuff, because that's kind of how I used to do it. I would just say a bunch of stuff and everyone just stare at me, and nobody wrote a single thing down. I'm like, hey guys, some of the stuff is good, like maybe write it down like this, But so I'd be like, okay, I will write it down and then you'll write it down. And, like when I'm shooting a video, I didn't have a good way of shooting me in front of a whiteboard, And so I was like, COVID hits, right? I've got to put all my lectures on in video form, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to write on a piece of paper, and it's like it doesn't have my charming face in the frame, but it's hopefully it's clear, and that's kind of like what I'm after. And I don't know, I mean, I'm not trying to be some kind of mysterious person by not including my face. I just couldn't figure out how to do it, technologically.
Well, it's hard because we're all doing this from a camera on our device. We're not sitting here with the whole setup and lighting, but I have all that, and you're not very far away. I can have it delivered to you. We could set you up.
It'd be fun. Yeah, let's do it. Let's.
Okay. So did you guys all hear that? Did everybody hear that? Thank you, Matthew, for paying attention and contributing. Appreciate you, brother. I'll reach out to Bill Fletcher and see what he says. He may tell me to go F myself. He may say I got time. Either way, he hasn't told me to go F myself before. He actually went off on me once for posting something that he felt was antithetical to Biden getting elected.
It's good to get labor people in. It's good to hear that perspective, and it's part of the struggle. I think what I'm into right now is like, there's so many different parts of the struggle,
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about what happens in the workplace, but it is about that too,
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about what happens in politics. It's not just about who you vote for, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's about everything, you know, and every venue is a venue for struggle and for, you know, for change. So I don't like when people say like, oh, what happens on Twitter doesn't matter, or what happens on whatever. I mean, everything matters, right? I think that's also part of the philosophy of Marxism, to say that, look, societies are complex and everything is connected to everything else. So do you know like what kinds of things change society and make it, you know, either more right wing, more capitalistic, or make it more socialistic, or prepare us for revolution or whatever? No, I don't either, right? I mean, nobody knows. And, you know, you do what you can, right? And I think it's very disempowering to say, you know, oh, what you're doing doesn't matter or something, you know? Like the man wants us to think that, you know, the man wants us to think that we don't matter, but we do, you know?
No, that's like super important, like remembering that you matter. And I feel like that becomes kind of the average person's when things get a little too complicated. It's like, well, you know, they're all crooks. Who cares? And I'm like, well, no, we can actually have some real change. Like we're on the precipice right here, man.
Yeah.
Change is gonna come. Yes. He's mad at me again. He gets mad at white people sometimes. He's okay, son. You want to come here? No? Yeah, sometimes. He thinks you're Santa Claus.
And yeah, well, you know, just tell him not every white man with a white beard is Santa Claus. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, well, he wants to know why Santa's talking to Dad and doesn't have a gift. Giftless Santa's got him pissed off.
I mean, don't you think giving gifts is itself kind of a socialistic moment here, right? A moment of sharing, a moment where you know, put aside like, okay, not everything's about exchange. But then, of course, capitalism comes in and
fucks that whole thing up, because then people get stressed out about the dumbest shit ever.
I know, and it says buy stuff, and it says, oh, well, think about what the value that you received is, whether it's equivalent to the value that you gave, and whatever. And it's like, none of that's giving, you know.
No, you had posted something. Some girl had posted. You retweeted it, and it was about potlucks.
Yeah,
I think they were trying to equate potlucks to socialism. Is that what she was trying to do?
I mean, I think she was just saying, you know, this is a way that you can communicate what socialism is in the South, you know, where, and it's like, there's nothing more Southern than a potluck, you know? And I agree. I think it's a good metaphor. It's a metaphor that touches people's lives, you know, and that's good. All I said was, I think we should differentiate between the micro level stuff and the macro level stuff, you know? Like micro level sharing and cooperation is important. That's part of being a human being. It's part of being a good person, right? You know, like, hey, somebody needs help, you help them out, right? You don't say that'll be $10, right?
Well, depending on who it is.
Yeah, well, I just
lived a checkered life, Dr.
I get a little bit triggered when somebody says like being a decent person is socialism or something, you know, like.
I see what you're saying.
You know, like, okay, well, there's something here about, are we being decent on a societal level? You know, are we letting people starve? Are we letting people get evicted? Are we letting people be homeless? Are we letting people live with the fear that they could be destitute at any moment? Are we letting people, you know, become bankrupt because of medical bills? And of course, the answer is yes, we are, right? But we shouldn't be, right?
I feel like people feel powerless, though. Do you feel that same? Like people feel powerless to those mechanisms of society that enable homelessness and extreme poverty. Like I feel like people see those things and they go, well, that's just for those are my fears for not trying harder.
Yeah.
Right.
Or you look for a solution, like these things are so awful. I mean, you know, like you said, there's like a homeless encampment near you, right? There's one near me. I mean, I live on the edge of a river in Riverside. And there's a huge homeless encampment in the river, you know, like in the river wash. And it's a sad, disturbing thing, and one naturally wants to think like, well, what can I do to help that sad, disturbing thing, And you don't like thinking like, well, maybe there, that's essentially outside of my individual control to do. I mean, of course, you can help a person out, whatever. That's great, and everyone should do that, but that doesn't really solve the problem, right? So,
No.
you know,
No.
you might tell yourself, okay, that's part of it or whatever. And I feel like, capitalism kind of does this and says like, oh yes, philanthropy, charity, focus your
Oh, it definitely does that. It definitely does that.
Yeah.
And it also, to me, it also tells people that these people are there because of their mistakes.
Yeah.
It is not a failure in the system. They are the failure, not the system. And I'm wondering, as this population is exponentially growing, like I took pictures, and for whatever reason I didn't upload them on my computer, of the camp the other day. And I was going to do a long Twitter thread about returning to normal, because it was bad before. Like before Trump got elected, literally had to move a boat from in front of my door so I could open it. Someone dropped their boat that they didn't want anymore right in front of my door. I don't know too many people that have had to move a boat, not a canoe, but a boat. And that wasn't the first boat that was on my street. That's the level of garbage people dump.
Right.
And it's grown so much, they're literally in the middle of the street. Like, it's bad. And I got allergies. They light tires on fire. So you get this just disgusting, like, toxic smell in the air. And it really is those old, where you see like the dudes like singing in front of the barrel on fire, like, money. But they're not singing. They're just like, that's what's keeping them warm. It's just barrels on fire of God knows what. And you're just like, holy shit. Like, this is what those dystopian movies look like. And this is becoming an everyday occurrence. This isn't like, because sometimes they would have get-togethers and there'd be hella people and there's a barrel on fire and you're like, oh, it's a barbecue, and they invite you and you hang out. But no, now it's just like, no, this is fucking Tuesday, and there's multiple of them. And when people drive down the street now, because it's kind of a shortcut to get to Target, the street, they're flying down it and they give a fuck who they hit. So you got to keep all these guys got to keep their pets on a leash. There's so many dead cats. It's crazy how people, I feel like as it gets bigger, either you're going to go, well, you know what, this is a problem and this is now a failure of the system, or the blinders just get that much thicker.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, how do we keep the blinders off? Like, what is the narrative that we must spin on our end? Because the narrative that it's just their fault and it's not a failure of the system is great, because it's been working really well to keep people like, yeah, it's just their fault. These people want to be there. Really? That guy's shit in a bucket. I don't think he really wants to shit in a bucket. I've never met a guy that's like, oh, I love shit in a bucket.
Yeah. I mean, what Gloria said earlier about evictions and about people's stuff being out on the street. I mean, it's such a vivid image, and it's like you can just feel like the sadness and desperation in that moment. I mean, obviously, if you've experienced it personally, right? But just even if you haven't, that's a pretty intense thing, and yeah, I how do you kind of build that compassion, that in this moment when our discourse is so I don't know, it's so far from that, it feels like, so I don't know. I mean, we do have a media machine that is just does not display those voices ever, you know?
Not well. You
Yeah.
got to have kind of the perfect homeless person. I just found out and this is, so you're in California. You're not a native, right? I forget where you're from.
I'm from the East Coast originally. I grew up.
Yeah. You're not a native of here. You're a Yankee. So Operation Room Key was a program that Gavin Newsom rolled out. There's all these vacant hotels, and the program was to put a bunch of homeless people in the vacant hotels, and it was going to put the most vulnerable people first. So a lot of older people, chronically homeless, severe mental illness, big time drug addictions, big time disabilities. Put these people in hotels and get them housed during the pandemic. Well, the money's starting to dry up for that program, and the shelter that I was at, which in Oakland housed about 300 plus people, is closing. End of the year.
Mm.
And it's not like there's a funneling for them to go anywhere.
Right.
And there was a hotel next to it that housed people that were COVID positive, and you were to stay there for 14 days or 21 days, whatever it is, and then if you were negative, you left. And there was a few people that were, chronically homeless that didn't want to leave. And it wasn't like, again, you didn't get funneled anywhere. You got a certificate and a foot in the ass. And I was told the story of the last person, because they just shut that facility down. Either the state or the county bought it, and I don't know if they're going to be using it for the inmates, because another thing, every county in California sued the prison system, so prisoners can't just get set free. They have to go quarantine somewhere first, and then so after a while it was just the prisoners coming to quarantine, or the formerly incarcerated people coming to quarantine. But the prison system wasn't letting a lot of guys go at once. It was a couple at a time. So there was one guy left, and he had been there for like 20 some days, and he was a 24-year-old kid that was chronically homeless, and they were trying to get him into the facility that I was in next door, and he just wasn't homeless enough. And he got one of those swift kicks to the ass. So we have this great window dressing on how we want to address homelessness, and I do agree with Gavin Newsom that permanent supportive housing is a good solution. But I think that the way we look at permanent supportive housing has to go further. But I'm hoping that the Times or somewhere starts to kind of re-examine Room Key. I don't know if it was a total failure or not. I just know that where you're at, Southern California only filled up like 25% of the rooms that they had. And you know as well as I know, there's a lot of people that need rooms.
Yeah.
In SoCal, like you said, there's a camp down the street from you that should have had outreach workers putting them in a facility. But again, you have to answer, like, I want to say 100 questions to be homeless enough.
Well, also, it's like, okay, so you're supposed to immediately turn around and trust the government and the authorities that has been, either hostile or indifferent for, right, all the time on the street, right? Like, that's a pretty big ask, like, does the government really have your back? I mean, or is it just another attempt to make it look like they do for performative purposes, right? I mean, and it's probably that, let's be honest, right? Like, and also it's like, well, how do you spend the money? Like, if you wanted to, I mean, there's efficient and inefficient ways of housing people, like, I mean, any effort is better than nothing, but like paying hotels the going rate, I mean, come on, like
they did pay the going rate.
Yeah, that's the least efficient use of state money that I could think of. If if you wanted to make a dent in the housing situation, use the power of the government, use eminent domain, like, or just build housing, right? And I mean, the government can do so much more than what it does. It just doesn't want to upset any capitalist, right? It doesn't want to
No.
step on any private property anywhere, right? Wants to make sure that landlords still get their. I mean, this is just what it's like what the capitalist state does, right? Shovel money toward the wealthy and corporations, and it's an extremely inefficient way of dealing with social problems, to say the least, right?
It almost feels like, and I don't think this is the case, like they want these great big problems. They want these failures on a massive level. And I'm sure they don't. I mean, nobody wants to be holding the bag on a failure like that. But
Yeah.
It feels like if this fails, then socialism fails in some way, shape, or form. Even though Gavin Newsom is miles away from being a socialist or even embodying anything in that world, I still think politicians want to have a program that they can hang their hat on and say, that's why I'm a man of the people, because I did this program. Obama's always going to be able to hang his hat on Obamacare. For whatever failure it has, he'll be able to say, but what did you motherfuckers have before me?
Yeah.
He'll always be able to say that. So will Joe Biden. And as much as I loved the spirit of the program, we have these empty hotels. We're going to give these people 3 meals a day. When I got in the inner workings of the system, it kind of disgusted me how it works. And I would say more from the nonprofit level than even from the government level. Like the government had no idea what the nonprofit was doing. And I'm gone from the company now. I can say it on air, and I don't have a lawsuit against them. I spilled the beans to the county about what was going on from a violence standpoint, from a procedural standpoint, from a non-testing for COVID having outbreak standpoint. And one of the people from the county whose job it was to actually like check on the facility was like, I didn't know any of this was happening. They're like, we've heard stories, but whenever we go to management, they're like, no, there's no problems here. Because you get so much money for a filled bed.
Yeah.
Housing homeless people is a business. Don't ever get it twisted. A very profitable business. Big
philanthropy, big charity. It's like there's a symbiotic relationship there between the problems of capitalism and then the solutions that capitalism suggests for the problems of capitalism, right? And there's whose interest is it to eliminate the actual problem, right? I mean, the problem's a prop.
It's Batman.
Yeah.
It's Batman. There's a issue of Batman. If you Google it, you can find it, where Alfred calls out Bruce Wayne and says, you're the richest man in Gotham. You could fix all these problems if you just hired everybody. And it's pretty hilarious.
I have to read that comic. I've seen the panel,
You know what I'm talking about.
And I was like, is this for real? I didn't read, but I only saw like that one image. And, the internet, you see images out of context all the time, right?
I mean, Batman goes on to, give some reason why he has to fight for.
Yeah.
It has to do with his parents.
Hey, is that Phoenix right there?
That's Phoenix. Phoenix. Grandma wants to say hi. Look, Phoenix is Santa. Okay. Okay. Sorry. I'm sorry. He is mad at me. I am not dad of the year right now. He wants to watch his show, and this is a big screen computer, so he can watch his. If you can hear him, he's asking to watch his favorite show. Phoenix, can you go get your mom? Oh, yeah, he is mad at me.
His dad's show is not his favorite show, huh?
He's an interesting cat because it is and it isn't. He also thinks that every black man on TV is me.
Aww.
His mom was watching a Kobe Bryant documentary, and that little motherfucker was yelling out, "Daddy!"
Aww.
I was like, "I'm not Kobe, not 6'9". Quit making daddy insecure.
I think if your son mistakes, Kobe for you, that's a good.
It's a good mistake. It literally is any blackballed man is me on television. Because he sees me on there, he's like, "Oh, it's just another blackball guy. It's Daddy," which I don't know. None of my other kids ever did it. Just his crazy black ass. Lovely child. Is there any new books you're writing, Dr. Bair? Are you working on anything that we should know about?
I do have this hope that I'm going to be able to write a textbook that's like an intro to economics textbook, but from a critical perspective. But I haven't been able to get to that because I've been, so busy like with my content. I mean, I'm kind of like I'm behind all the time, right? Because it's like I'm teaching and I have to be like recording and editing and stuff. Probably the next thing you're going to see from me is a video about the post 1978 China, that after the reforms, because I think of Chinese, like I've done two so far, right? I did one, the Qing dynasty and the warlord period, right? The precursors to the revolution in China, 1949 revolution. Then I did one on Maoist China, but that period ends, right? And so now I'm working on one. I've got my slides and whatever. That'll probably be the next thing that'll drop. I mean, I don't know if there's interest in this hour-long lecture.
Well, that's what I've been. Oh, I don't have the script here in front of me anymore. That's what I was doing. So we're working on this animated series, and the professor, his name is Ken Hammond. Did I introduce you guys like I said I was going to do, or I haven't done it yet?
I don't know. I think you mentioned that name to me.
Okay, then I haven't done the introduction, and I apologize. So I will do that introduction tonight. Professor Hammond is a professor at New Mexico State, and I want to say Asian American history is his thing. Old school socialist from way back. I think he was a SDS. Old school cat, and he did a series, probably 9 hours, 10 hours on China from like 1000 AD to now. And he did it with I think he did it with the Chow Collective. I think that's what they're called, Zhao Collective.
Yeah.
I want to say he did it with them.
They do some good stuff.
They do, and that's how I actually met him through Gloria. Gloria was like, "Oh, you want to do something on China? You got to talk to Ken Hammond." So Gloria hooked it all up, and so he wrote a script, and I volunteered to read it, and I've been recording it, and it's the 2 minute. It's a little over 2 minutes now. We still got to cut it down to 2 minutes. So I got to read it so the animators can write to it, and they're going to condense it down more. But reading over and over and over again about kind of this arc of China has been really interesting, because the whole thing is to kind of dispel myths about China being a boogeyman, because constantly when we hear China's name, it's always in the context of doing some sort of like Cobra. Did you ever watch G.I. Joe? Like they're like Cobra of the world. Like it's this evil, like China's trying to get a weather machine to change the weather and make everything rain because that's what China wants.
Yeah, exactly.
So that has been interesting.
That's cool. That's cool. You start a new career as a voice actor. That's very good. That could work.
It's just you keep hearing the kid running every so often. Daddy, Daddy, I want to watch Chico Bon Bon. Daddy.
Yeah.
And then I try to put a soundtrack to it. So.
Yeah. I had somebody say the nicest thing I heard on Twitter. They were like, "Thanks so much for these lectures. When are you going to set up a Patreon account so we can support you?" And I was like, "Y'all drive a hard bargain over here."
Speaking of that, bam.
There we go. We have to support 11 media. Send Jason a contribution on that through Patreon. That's the only way we're gonna continue to have shows like This Is Revolution, right? I mean, that's
all this shit costs money.
It does. Yeah.
This is not free Zoom shit you're on.
Not free. It's there's opportunity costs, right? I mean, there's other ways you could spend your time, and we all have to make a living. I mean, that's the reality. So,
quick question before you go. Have you ever read this book?
What does that say? Oh, talking to my daughter about the economy. Oh, how capitalism works and how it fails. I haven't read that. No, I know Varoufakis's work, somewhat, but I haven't read that book. Looks good though.
Because he was with the finance minister of Greece.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, he became famous for taking a very public position against austerity in Europe.
Yeah.
And saying, we can take a different path, and I mean, that's an important message. We don't need to do capitalist austerity, right? I mean, there's, we should do, we could, I mean, like we were talking about earlier, right? We can have lower taxes, and get better results from the government, right? We have to retune our spending. So I don't think socialism to me doesn't mean raise taxes, right?
Yeah, like Gloria was saying, I don't want my taxes to go up.
Paying enough, right? It's about changing the priorities of the government, and how the government uses resources.
And I think first and foremost is that we have to have an understanding of how the economy works, which is why I love talking to people like yourself, and why am I blanking all of a sudden? I met you through, oh my God, I'm really getting old because I'm blanking on the gentleman's name, and he's on the show all the time.
Arash Kalahi.
Fuck.
Yeah.
All these long ass names. It's your fault, Varoufakis.
We had we've become Twitter friends, and then we had a Zoom call and whatever. So we're we have a long distance relationship.
He's not too far from you. He
lives in. That's the weird thing about it. It's COVID,
he's fucking rad. He's been on the show pretty much since it started.
He's a great guy.
He did a live stream. He did the first live stream with me and another one of you professor people that wrote a book that I love called Welcome to the Rebellion. It's basically using Star Wars as a narrative for the left.
Yep, I listened to that show. Good.
So I love Arash. Is like, I fucking love that dude. Love his Twitter threads.
He writes some monster threads that go on and have reference to other threads. I mean, you can go down a rabbit hole in that.
A rabbit hole, but they're easy to follow.
Yeah, and
I feel like he's good at, again, telling a story that isn't hard to understand. And I feel like the constant message of this show is, how do I make it plain? And I keep watching that video. I watched that video of Gloria talking to those people too many times in South Carolina, because I feel like it's just make it plain. First of all, I got to come see you where you're at.
Yeah.
You're not going to come see me. I'm going to come see you where you're at. And second of all, got to make it plain. You have to understand how you can help yourself out of this, and you have to see a different way. And if you use the Star Wars narrative, if you're even a mild fan, and just for a second immerse yourself in that universe and think about that scene of Luke Skywalker looking at those two suns thinking like, this sucks. And an hour later, he destroys the biggest threat to, capitalistic hegemony in the universe.
Yeah.
So how do you go from this sucks to actually making a difference?
It's a great clip because it's like, it's about empowerment, right? She keeps on talking about, this is our moment. Yeah, we're going to have to fight, but we can win. I mean, that's a very hopeful message. And I think, that has a lot of resonance. It would be great to see her and the PSL become better known. I think the campaign did succeed in raising that profile somewhat. I mean, this is a tough election to run as a third-party candidate, but I mean, I think they did well for a party that is not very well known. I mean, I think you can build something, and that's a good thing for the left and for socialism.
I mean, I went off in my own house about Kanye getting more votes. That pissed me off. That pissed me off. I think maybe me and you might have talked about that. That shit pissed me off. And then I feel like the left really shat on third parties this time around more so than usual because of the whole Trump thing.
It's a dangerous thing. It's a dangerous thing for us to say, yeah, we have a democracy, but you better not vote how you want, I mean, what the hell is that, right? I mean, that's an anti-democratic message, and we have a lot of these anti-democratic messages, it was crazy to me because I start seeing these things about the Electoral College. I mean, in defense of the Electoral College, and for people to say it's on equity grounds, I mean, this to me is absolutely absurd. I mean, the Electoral College was created to bring the slaveholding states into the Union, right? I mean,
can you do a quick history lesson for us, sans the writing down, without the dry erase board?
So I just think it's crazy that people would say like, oh yes, and this helps underrepresented or states that don't have as much population to be recognized, and it's like, the state is not the relevant unit. Who the hell cares whether a state is democracy is one person, one vote, right? Like, it shouldn't matter where the hell you live, right? It doesn't matter that California is a more populous state than South Dakota, right? One person, one vote. You don't need the Electoral College. The Electoral College literally adds nothing to that and creates the possibility that the popular vote in the Electoral College, I mean, we've seen this, right? That they diverge. I mean, we saw this in the last election. I mean, so that's not good, right? That's anti-democratic. Why on earth do we go with that, right? When we have a culture that supposedly uplifts democracy, right? Uplifts voting. Why do we weaken it all the time, right? That's not good. So I know it's a tough moment to run third party, but I think you can still do good work running third party.
It was interesting because I even had friends that are more on the liberal side of things that were defending the Electoral College, like, oh, we just need to reform it because it's a good thing because there's states that are smaller that need the Electoral College. I'm like, well, what, like you said, what do they need it for? I don't understand.
Yeah,
they have their own bills that they vote on in their state.
Yeah,
that has nothing to do with.
It's anything. Not Rhode Island that votes for something. Oh, we need Rhode Island to be represented. Who the fuck cares? The people of Rhode Island need to be represented, right? I mean, that's what makes it union,
Which is so funny, and I think that there's something to be said about the Democratic Party being really good at pushing diversity. Like there's a gentleman named Eugene Puryear that I believe is part of Gloria's party, super smart cat. And he had posted or retweeted Joe Biden's cabinet. And he's like, this is the nothing is going to fundamentally change cabinet picks.
Yeah.
And there was like a black guy on it. But I think he worked in the fossil fuel industry. So it's like, but, it's diverse. There's going to be a woman that's the head of the Pentagon, and it's diverse.
Yeah.
That's, that's what diversity looks like. Everybody can stick a foot in your ass. Not just an old white guy. A young Latin woman can stick a foot, just get it in there, and that's equality.
I mean, that if that's what it looks like, a lot of people, I think, this is part of the backlash. Like a lot of people are saying, "Well, I don't want that," right? I mean, that's where these protest votes come in, and I think it's very dangerous to not look at that.
Mm-hmm.
But left-wing populism, socialism, always beats right-wing populism. I mean, because right-wing populism, it's a reaction, right? It's like saying, "Oh, women have too many rights." Like, come on, man, are you for real? That doesn't lead to a place that anyone wants to go. that leads to a Handmaid's Tale dystopia or something, right? Or it leads back to, the antebellum period or something. I mean, like, nobody wants to live in that society. That is totally at odds with the norms, the culture of modern society. And I think even the reactionaries know that. It's a kind of cry of pain. It's not real policy that comes out of this movement. It's a cry against the status quo, and you need a good answer to that. You need to say, yeah, here's how we restructure things to make this society truly work for everybody. I mean, we are not going to create some kind of ethno state in the United States. It's just not going to happen. Like, get fucking real. I don't care. Like, I don't care if Richard Spencer becomes president or some shit like that. There's no fucking way. And that's good, right? I mean, that's very good. So, like, what these extremists want is just, it's pie in the sky. I mean, people say communists are pie in the sky. It's pie in the sky is white nationalism. I mean, that has no future whatsoever.
Your dreams of a white ethno state are just pie in the sky, brother.
Yeah, it is completely contrary with, like, a lot of the culture, politics of the United States. So, which is good, I mean, there's good things about the United States. I mean, as much as I like to criticize, because I think that critics don't get them enough press. I think this is a society that has puts a lot of stake on fairness. And I think that creates an opportunity, right, to say, yeah, well, how do we make this fair for real?
So. One quick question I want to ask you before we go. Are you a Star Wars fan?
I am a Star Wars fan. Yeah. I mean, I grew up, but I feel like, you get to be a certain age and then you're like a fan from way back, and like, oh yes, that was a thing we were into back when we were nerds, like as kids.
Oh, I'm still a nerd, unfortunately. Or
yeah. But now
I wear it with pride.
So it's like, okay, maybe it's not as edgy as it once was, right?
I'm trying to do this episode where I hit up the guy that wrote the book, Dr. Michael Harris. I hit him up, and he's down to come back. I just did a show with a gentleman named Dan Larson. Who were you? I know you got a few years on me. Were you like a toy guy as a little guy, action figures at all?
I did have a bunch of action figures. Yeah.
Okay, so I did a show with a guy named Dan Larson who has a show on YouTube that's pretty big. It's called Toy Galaxy, and he goes back and revisits all the old cartoons of the 80s and toys of that era. And actually has an interesting critique of capitalism in that. Like, he even goes on to explain, like, well, there was an oil embargo in the 70s, and that's why Star Wars toys are only 3 inches high, because they were more expensive to make. And
interesting.
And that's why this didn't happen, and that's why they discontinued this line. And he actually went into like why Toys R Us closed because of the leverage buyout with Bain Capital. And so he came on the show, and we had a real fun talk. And I talked about having him and Dr. Harris on, and I was like, I would love to have like a cool panel of people that were Star Wars fans, because you have to be a fan to like dig into it.
Yeah.
And to have a discussion about how we can properly use Star Wars as the narrative for the left. Because that book does get pretty deep about things that I didn't even fucking see in those movies. Like, hey, there was a lot of inequality before the Empire fell. Right. Like they're talking about it in the thing. You know, Luke's from this shit planet. There's slavery in the Outer Rims.
Yep.
And with this new show, The Mandalorian, it also kind of talks about, you know, the Empire has fallen. It's supposed to take place 6 years after Return of the Jedi. So you have a fallen empire. How do you get fascism once again?
Well, I mean, the fact that George Lucas was like, you know, meaning to depict the empire as the United States, you know, I mean, that's something else, right? I mean, it comes out of a different political moment, right? But
yeah,
but not that much has changed, like in terms of who
Well,
is
he made
empire.
those prequels in the 90s to tell how a society becomes authoritarian / fascist.
Yeah.
And that was like the one thing, Kanye West to me is the broken clock of pop culture, because, every so often he hits the nail on the head. And he was on Joe Rogan's shows like, I've been watching the prequels and like, how could people not understand this is how a country becomes fascist? Like he was just, his mind was blown by that.
Yeah.
And I love that, because it's so many people on its face like, oh, these sucked. It's like, yeah, they're not the most entertaining to watch, because to Kanye's point, it is like watching a documentary. We were talking about go back and rewatch the movies. Go back and rewatch Phantom Menace, knowing that now it's about trade agreements and taxes.
Yeah.
It's a whole different film. You're like, oh, okay. Now the pod race is a lot more entertaining with young Anakin. After I sat through that 45 minutes of dialogue about trade agreements and congressional nominees and who we need in the Senate. Like that episode of Phantom Menace is literally like watching Left Media on YouTube.
Left Media with an occasional lightsaber battle.
That's why it's cooler.
Well, I mean, I think this goes back to the point about, every space you want to be injecting a message, right? Every space you want to be speaking to, and, an experience that millions of people have shared, like watching certain movies or, music too, that's an opportunity, because that's a shared experience,
So that's what I'm trying to do. I want to do like a big holiday. Like, I don't know if you remember the Star Wars holiday special that George Lucas constantly was pulling off YouTube, because it was like the biggest fiasco of his career to get Star Wars tied to that thing.
Huh.
It was there's like a singing and dancing thing, but the actual actors from Star Wars were in it in like 78.
No, I never saw that. Wow.
If you could find it on YouTube, if someone's pulled it down, look for that Star Wars holiday special. It's pretty funny. But I was like, oh,
I'm a friend of the show, so whatever you need, just let me know, and I'll come on and do my song and dance, and I only hope that it connects.
Well, I'm stoked. I'll tell Dr. Harris, and I'll tell Dan Larson, who's excited to meet all these people on the left. He's a toy guy that is learning about this leftist world, and he wants to be more educated on it, and so he'll be more than happy to meet good people like yourself. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me, Dr. Bair.
Absolutely.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to me and record like a long ass podcast with me.
That was a lot of fun. Yeah, good conversation, and I appreciate the questions, and I think I see you as somebody who's always learning, and I think that's a good example, right? Because we all, whatever it is we know very little,
Mm-hmm.
We're all students here,
What is that saying? The more I learn, the more I realize I didn't know.
Yeah, right. I feel
that shit bites me in the ass at least twice a day.
You must be learning at a very rapid rate then.
I gotta learn a little faster than these badass kids. Someone says oh man, we missed all these comments. Can you say hi to my cousin Nick Gurr? Oh my goodness. Hello, Nick Gurr. I'm so sorry you're in the hospital. Is Nick okay? Hopefully this cat is okay. I hate to hear anybody in the hospital. I'm gonna play a clip of Dr. Bair on my show. To subscribe to his YouTube channel, please, so he can get 1,000 subscriptions and he can start monetizing it.
I've no plan to do any of that.
Hey, I'm trying to push. It doesn't cost nobody any money to subscribe. That's click a goddamn button. Click the button.
If you like lengthy lectures about economic theory, then hit the button. If not,
we're going to figure out. Look, I'm going to figure out how to put a soundtrack to your lectures. Would you like that? Can I give you at least a soundtrack?
Okay. I mean, yeah, it's going to be like that Brand Nubian song.
If you want it like that, if you want a mellow, we can do them hard. I don't know if you can see the instruments behind me. I got to bring some stuff home.
You got to find the right clip, I think, you know.
If you let me, I will soundtrack the shit out of all the stuff you say. You'd be the hardest dude out there. They'll be like, damn, when is Dr. Bair coming out with another one of them fire mixtapes?
Maybe you need to create a parody channel. Like, damn, I never seen a YouTuber with less than 200 subscriptions have his own parody channel.
Hey, I put Gloria's up, and somebody was trying to be an a-hole and troll on it. And they were like, oh, she's full of shit. And they said something else. And the last comment was, I can't lie, man. This is a fire beat or something like that.
Oh shit. I can't even troll because it's so good. I mean,
that was the whole plan. Like, look, if I can put a beat, like if I have to make it, you can ask. My girl's not here. Because she works too in front of a computer, and she looks over and sees me like, God damn, and I'm just like getting fired up. I'm like, this one right here.
That's great.
So, I want you guys. I'm gonna, as Dr. Bair signs off, I am going to play his clip that I edited on the show, and also I do want to add this. I have very long conversations with people because we talk beforehand, and if they have time, we talk afterwards. So sometimes we're talking for a couple hours. Trying to get less than 5 minutes out of those conversations is hard.
Yeah.
And your clip is like 6:57.
Yeah.
Because I was like, nope, can't cut it here. And if you see my note paper, I have a note paper where okay, here's where I'm going to cut the clip. I write the beats around where I'm going to cut it, and then cut it here, and then I'll hear another thing you say, and I go, no, we got to start here. And
you want to include that?
Keep it all in. We're doing it live. Fuck it. So it's frustrating to make, and if you see the notes, it looks like a madman scribbling. Like that movie 23 with what's that fucking guy's name? The funny white guy. He was in The Mask. Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
It looks like that all over the place. It's just random numbers that make no sense to anyone but me. But I'm very, very happy with the finished product on yours. Thank you again, Mike Cobra, for making the visuals on that. He's the one that finds the picture of you and gets the shit just right. So it's like,
yeah. That came out great.
So I'm very proud of that one, and I've been trying to blast it out on the social medias as much as possible.
Yeah.
But Facebook just banned all political boosting any political posts. So
well, Twitter's where it's at, I guess.
Twitter's where it's at. So if you guys see Dr. Bair's face with "This is Revolution" by it, and you hear and you click it, and all of a sudden you hear like a fire ass beat. Subscribe.
That's right.
And share. All right, Dr. Bair.
Thanks again for having me, man.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much.
All right.
Have a good night. All right, guys. I do have one more special guest coming tonight. But before that guest comes on, I do want to play this clip real quick, and then I will get the last special guest.
On the private prison necessarily, I think that's a problem. But even without that, like some of the worst prisons are state prisons. I mean, I think it causes a certain extra discomfort to be like, oh, now we're outsourcing this to corporations and involving the profit motive. Could that not doesn't that have the potential to make things worse, And I think, yeah, it does. But, the state-run system is already pretty bad, I mean, like it's not like, oh, if everything was state-run, it'd be great. No, I don't agree with that whatsoever. So my thing is more like, can we create a theoretical container, that can understand any of these different permutations, like whether it's a state prison or a private prison or whatever is going on in terms of the labor. How do we characterize the labor process? The basic way I went about this is to say, slavery, or what I call the slave fundamental class process. I'm using a Marxist class analysis in order to understand this. So from the Marxist perspective, it's like, who performs the labor in society? That's like a key entry point, right? At a particular point of production, who produces surplus? And so surplus is defined by that which is above the needs of the direct producer. So the necessary surplus labor distinction. Now in prisons, this is complicated because prisons involve welfare, right? Like the inmates receive a whole bundle of consumption goods regardless of whether they perform labor or not, right? So that's what we mean by welfare, right? Like it's a universal provision. And so housing, exactly.
Food, healthcare.
Exactly, right. And, this is pretty rare to find that in the United States, right? The forms of welfare that we have are fairly weak, right? I mean, we have like aid to families with dependent children, right? We have SNAP, we have Social Security, right? All of these are limited forms of welfare, right? But they're not necessarily all that comprehensive, right? I mean, like, talk to somebody whose only income is Social Security, right? Like, are all of their needs met by that, right? I mean, it's certainly better than nothing, right? But prison has a very comprehensive form of welfare, and that has to be taken into account because the needs of the inmates, for food, clothing, shelter, and many other things are met, right? So,
and this is where I hate to cut you off, and let's table that point that you're making, because this is where I think a lot of the argument comes into play. As I was telling Dr. Bair off air, I was having a discussion with someone, family member, and they volunteer at a youth facility here in the Bay Area, and their point was there was some protesting going on in California. There's been people protesting the prison system. Definitely been a lot of COVID problems with the way the wardens are handling everything. That's a whole nother topic for a whole nother show. And they've been calling for the release of a lot of prisoners. And also there's that whole ICE component where a lot of people are getting released, literally serving their time, and then going to another ICE facility, then getting kicked out of the country as a whole. The Guardian did a great piece on that. I can link that. But their point was that this youth facility for a lot of kids was better than home, quote unquote. Therefore, the youth facility is a good place. And I've also heard that argument for prison, where usually you hear this from law enforcement. Well, these people are going to steal so they can go to jail and actually get a bed for the night or the month or whatever the situation may be. So to your point about welfare, quote unquote.
Yeah. To me, these are arguments for communism that I'm hearing. They're just in a very distorted form. Like, should we allow people to perish because they can't afford food? Should we allow people to sleep on the street because they can't afford rent? I mean, is that okay? Does a civilized society do that, right? I mean, I don't think so, honestly. I think it's pretty clear. Like, we have the wealth to give everyone the basics, right? We can give everyone a decent life. And why don't we, I mean, like let's ask the question that way, let's not start with, okay, well, society is like this, blah, blah, blah. Well, no, that's not a good place to start, right? Because the way that society is organized is absurdly cruel, right? We don't start there. We start with, what should it look like? you know? I mean, that provides some clarity, you know? And so to me, like the thinking that says like, oh, yes, right, these people want to be incarcerated because then they get a hot meal. It's like, yeah, you're starting in the wrong place, and it's giving you a very distorted idea of things, right? Like you're starting with the idea that, look, some people are just going to starve, right? Some people are just going to be homeless. I don't accept that as a starting point, you know? I think that's a pointlessly cruel starting point. I think we could do a lot better than that.
To hear the rest of this show and more, you can find us at This Is Revolution Podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, SoundCloud, and more. All right, we are back. And if you can hear some chatter in the background, that is Phoenix Joaquin watching his favorite show, Chico Bon Bon. He insisted on watching it, and he is watching it behind us. Thank you again, Gloria La Riva, for coming on. I appreciate you so much. Thank you again, Dr. Bair, for coming on. See, you're with us in spirit always. And I finally have his YouTube channel up. So sometimes I talk about it on the show, but my girlfriend actually works in medical research. And one of the things that have been like kind of dominating a lot of talk about current events is the press releases that have been coming out from companies like Moderna, and I think Pfizer had another one, about their effectiveness of their COVID vaccines. So the music's too loud and it's distracting. I'm sorry. I try to turn it down as low as I can where you can hear it. I will try my best every time to make sure that they're not too distracting. But without any further ado, I'd like to introduce my next guest, medical research extraordinaire, Jessica Bautista. Yes, she is coming on. You wanna?
Yeah, how you want to do it?
Because you have to step in front of the microphone.
Oh, but we have to share the microphone.
Yes, we have to share the microphone. So get a little closer because the light's going in. So we were talking about earlier this morning. We were talking about the effectiveness of these vaccines, and you had went on this interesting rant where I was like, "You're coming on the show tonight to do the same rant about because you hear these statistics that say these vaccines are 95% effective, and what does that really translate to when they say that? What does that really mean?"
Yeah, I think just a little bit more background. For me, I've been in medical research for over 10 years, not so much conducting research, but mapping out the logistics for research studies. So I do have an opinion. I don't have a medical opinion or scientific opinion. It's just my opinion being in the field for over 10 years. Mm-hmm. So just kind of based on that, I was reading an article, and I can't remember the source, but, you know, kind of telling you that the way it was a professor, how he framed it was a lot of these claims about being 95% effective really relies on having the whole population get vaccinated. So in order for these vaccines to be, let's say, 80% effective, 100% of the US would have to have access to these vaccines and receive treatment in order for 80% to actually get treated and receive treatment in an effective way. So
In all fairness, it's hard to do because our son right now is throwing a bit of a hissy fit, and he's messing with me because I'm messing with him while he's watching his favorite show.
Right. Yeah. So that's just kind of what I was telling you. And I think in addition, just kind of thinking about how long this kind of shelter in place situation will be, my projection will be.
You were like years.
Well, I mean,
you were like, learn to live with it.
I mean, a lot of it is just kind of like just understanding like preclinical work and clinical research takes over 5 years usually to kind of get a drug into commercial. And so in kind of thinking that way and kind of thinking about the strategy that a lot of these pharmaceutical companies are doing. So they're kind of fast tracking drugs by taking drugs that they've shelved over time and trying to either reformulate it or do additional research to kind of show its effectiveness in COVID. And so best case scenario, I feel like a vaccine won't be available until mid 2023. And so just kind of thinking about that, PPE is really important to have. So I'm trying to understand how the government will supply that, or how people will have to, if not now, have to kind of learn to wear masks and social distance and learn to not congregate in large groups during the holidays or during celebrations.
So what you're saying is that we're not going to be able to go to a football game, is what you're trying to tell me.
I mean, if the NFL or college football or high school football games have the capacity or the funding to have those cool screens of just people virtually there, then yeah. I mean, I think they're trying to do some interesting strategies as far as what you were calling them, like pods.
Yeah, pods. Yeah.
The pod strategy. So
that's my take. My take is that live entertainment, like sporting events and football games, are going to eventually become something that's going to be very, very expensive to go to, because you're going to have to buy like she said, like a pod where a group can and for the stadium to make money, they sell beer and food, and you can't make money when you're at a third of your capacity. So you're going to have to make money somehow. So I see more paid services for live events, music, and sports, especially. I mean, I don't really see it getting much better either.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate you taking the time.
You're welcome.
And have a good rest of your night.
You too.
I will see you as soon as I stop talking in the room we share. So that was the show. Thank you guys for checking it out. Thank you again, Gloria. Thank you again, Dr. Bair. My book recommendation, which my family is sitting on, was the book I showed Dr. Bair, Yanis Varoufakis' book about explaining the economy to my daughter, or how capitalism fails. Yes, Zoom concerts are going to be the future. And I think only people with money are going to be able to pay for the experience of being there. And I see festivals being the same way. I think it's going to be an excursion for the elite. That being said, I don't really see a good future for for the quality of music that you'll get as well. Thank you guys very much for checking out the show. If you missed any of it, you can see it on YouTube. We are trying to do something super crazy and get 1,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel by the end of the year. We have never pushed the YouTube channel at all. But now that I'm doing this a lot more full time, I'm going to be creating more content. You heard Dr. Bair say he was down to do more lessons. So we're going to be doing more programs that'll be on YouTube. So all of these live streams are on YouTube. I advise you guys all to watch the Halloween special. It starts off with the castration scene from the movie Street Trash, which my mother showed me at 11 years old. These live streams, thank you for asking that question. These live streams drop every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Sometimes we have guests. More often than not, I'm going to have a guest. Now that these have been kind of taken off and more people are watching them, I have to get a little more serious and have actual like production quality before I'd like hit somebody up last minute and be like, dude, let's just do this thing. So now there's some shows that we're planning out. And from, am I saying it right? Carrie Robinson. We're going to be doing more things with Toy Galaxy. So if you're a fan of Dan Larson and Toy Galaxy, his episode is airing, I think, this coming Wednesday. So the podcast, This Was Revolution podcast, airs 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. A new episode drops every Sunday and Wednesday, 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Apple Podcasts, YouTube, SoundCloud, Podbean. The most current episode that's up right now is one I had a lot of fun and we're building even more shows off of, which is an episode I did with Professor Torrey Reed Jr. He's the son of Adolph Reed. He wrote a really great book that if you listen to the show, I talk about all the time, called Towards Freedom, the Case Against Race Reductionism. In the book, he definitely takes Ta-Nehisi Coates to task. We definitely get into that in the show. And I am. See, you're ruining it, mama. I'm trying to get to it, mama. Dang. This is why my mom is not like on this show, because it would be like a constant poke like this. So I get enough pokes in the comment section. If she was here in real life, she'd just be like complaining at me. So in our conversation, I think it was more off air. We did a little bit of it on it and I clipped it. So this the most recent clip right now is one of a conversation I had with Torrey Reed. But Boys in the Hood just happened to be on Netflix, and because Jessica and I watch a lot of what do they call it, the black strong lead movies. Boys in the Hood showed up in one of the movies that I should watch, and of course I went to the theater to see it. I'll watch it every time it comes on, even if I have a critique of it. But Boys in the Hood is a hour-and-a-half long advertisement for the 1994 crime bill. The first scene is black on black crime rhetoric, and then the movie kind of just goes down that rabbit hole. Still, I'll watch it. You know, I'm not as bad as Torrey when it comes to the way as critical he is of it. But I reached out to Torrey about doing this live stream where we actually like take scenes from Boys in the Hood and comment on it. I also reached out to another amazing professor and author, Cedric Johnson, also has been on the show. I also reached out to Justin Hunt, who's also been on the show. He has a pretty big show, The Company Man. It's a hip hop show. When I told him about it, he immediately started tweeting scenes from Boys in the Hood. I'm going to reach out to Napoleon the Legend. I definitely talked to him about it. He said he was down. He's been on the show. He's definitely been on a live stream too. Patrick Jones says your mom seems like a badass. My mom is a badass. She is an amazing woman. I did a whole podcast episode about why I love my mom, and it's called Tucker Carlson and Hair Weaves. So if you find that episode on SoundCloud, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, it is a heartfelt I love you to my mom, Pan Davis, who gives me grief every time I see her 3 times a week. But yeah, she's pretty cool. How many people can say their mom got like arrested for protesting? And not like in the 60s when it was cool to get arrested, but like not that long ago. Like that's pretty cool. So thank you guys for watching the show. If you can, you know, like and subscribe, follow. If you want to help the show grow and keep the lights on, if you will, the lights literally went off while we were doing this. Become a patron. We are creating some patron-only programming. I'm going to be doing more of a monthly thing with a good friend of mine, Conan Neutron. It'll be a lot more political heavy when it comes to kind of just like the function of politics. Conan is also a musician who has a pretty huge music podcast, but our conversation is going to be strictly political. You also get merchandise. And we're gonna work out how we can figure out how to do these like lessons with Dr. Bair in a patron setting where it's literally like maybe a Zoom call. What do you guys think about that? And we can all sit there and raise our hands, if you will, and ask questions. He's not a fast talker, but you know, it's a lot to take in. And he does have quite a few lectures. Also, there's the animated series that I've been working on the voiceover for called Revolutionary Histories, where we're going to have these really cool 2-minute animated clips about histories that have been, I would say, distorted through the lens of Western propaganda. So the first one is the history of China. You heard Gloria. She was actually kind of the catalyst for this whole idea. She was the thing that sold it. And she'll be doing histories on Castro and the Bolivarian Revolution, Hugo Chavez, 2 people that she knew personally. And her takes on all those things are I love it. I love it. Also, if you have questions about Venezuela, I did a whole episode with Gregory Wilpert, who wrote a really good book called Changing Venezuela about the Bolivarian Revolution. That is a very, very great look into the reforms that I shouldn't say reforms. It's a good look on what the socialist project can look like. And I think when we think of Venezuela, we think of the failures. And in reading the book and even talking to Wilpert, he really goes into, because Chavez was constantly trying to figure out how to do it right. And he's constantly questioning himself. It's almost like he's writing out the notes and no, this isn't going to work. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. And the goal is like fairness, right? Equality. And I don't know, good book. Interesting episode. I think makes for good discussions. But thank you guys so much for checking out the show, and I will see y'all next Tuesday. Phoenix, do you want to say goodnight? You want to say it again? Hold on. You want to say it again to the? Okay, well, he's watching his show. So thank you guys.